Hi, this is your host, Herb Culp, and I will be talking about apartments, understanding A, B, C, and D class apartments and what those terms mean. But before I get started, this is not legal or financial advice. It is simply sharing what we do and to help others understand more about commercial real estate investing and, more importantly, apartment investing. So what I'll be talking about today is apartments and how we determine which apartments we want to go after and look for and underwrite and ultimately purchase. And so before I get started, I'm with the Eagle City Multifamily Investment Group, along with Asif Kumar and Nikki and Dr. Sanjeev Mall. And so let's jump right in here without further ado. And let's talk about what is an A, B, C, or D class apartment. And how do we tell the difference? What do people mean when they talk about all these different classes? Someone may say, for example, I buy A-class properties. Or someone may say, I focus on C-class properties in a B-class neighborhood. So there's another thing to keep in mind, that neighborhoods are also determined or classified by A, B, C, and D class. So A class, of course, is on the top end, new, better amenities, for example. B and C class, little lower. D class on the low end of the spectrum. For example, D class, another term might be war zone. Another term might be a bad place you don't want to invest, in my terms. Okay, so let's jump right in here and talk about how to determine whether a property is A class, B class, or D class, A, B, C, or D class, and why we use that system to classify our apartments. It's important to recognize why investors use this system, even though it might be subjective. In our opinion, it isn't the best system, but it's one of the most widely used. You'll want to learn it is so that you can communicate what you are looking for to the members of your team, especially your investor agents and other investors. Clear communication trumps a more preferred system in this case. And so let's talk a little bit about the property characteristics. Most investors seem to include property characteristics and age when grading properties. Again, since there's no objective way each of these classes are defined, you'll find different investors including different characteristics and valuing them differently within their grading system. And by the way, anyone live on the call, feel free to post in the chat where you're tuning in from and post any questions you might have. At the end, we'll make sure and answer these questions before we wrap it up. We'll make sure and have all your questions answered. So feel free to post your questions in the chat and we'll get to them as I can. So there are some of the characteristics about this grading system on the A, B, C, and D class ratings. It has to do with the quality of the building, affordability, amenities provided, tenant income levels, growth prospects, expected market appreciation, livability of the property, need for upgrades, rehab, and location, rent income, and of course the age. The age also referred to as vintage. Sometimes we'll hear someone saying it's a 1994 vintage. And if you're not familiar, you might be wondering, what does that mean? That simply means when it was built or the age of that building. Class A. Class A properties are quality, newer builds, typically in the last 10 to 20 years. They have amenities like gyms, a front desk concierge. They also have nicer finishes like granite and quartz countertops and stainless steel appliances in their apartments. These properties are often located in downtown areas or nicer single-family neighborhoods. Many people in the area are homeowners, not renters, and attract high-income professionals. If you think back to the types of places where you've rented, they were probably type A or perhaps type B properties. It's hard to cash flow these properties as they're often seen as higher potential for market appreciation. However, because of this perception, they sell at a higher market rate, typically. Class B properties are older buildings, often 20 to 30 years old, with higher grade rental finishes. They may have wood floors, granite countertops, luxury vinyl planking, and white and black appliances, white or black appliances. They don't often have a lot of amenities. Some larger apartment buildings might have a pool or a front desk. Location-wise, they're often outside of downtown, perhaps in neighborhoods with more townhomes or multifamily apartments. And that was Class B. And so let's take a little look at Class C. Class C properties are usually those built 30 to 40 years ago with pure rental grade finishes. They have cheaper non-stainless steel appliances, laminate countertops, and rare amenities. Tenants are often working class. They are usually located in neighborhoods composed of mostly multifamily properties. They may be somewhat worn down. Class C property generally cash flow well. Investors can force appreciation by upgrading them to be more type B properties. Management costs could be higher, as could vacancy and turnover. Let's talk a little bit about that. We just mentioned on Class C, it says cash flow. They'll cash flow well. And there's some reasons for that. You're able to force appreciation. And so we here at Eagle City Multifamily focus on B and C class because there's typically more room to force appreciation, meaning we can add value to the apartments by upgrading, maybe upgrading interiors, exteriors, Maybe we can add amenities to the property to make it maybe just a equal or two, or maybe a little better than some nearby properties, right? Maybe be able to raise the rents a little. And that's where the working class lives. So in a recession, people can't afford their house. They'll move into typically a B or C class. If it's a working class, the working class neighborhood families, like we just talked about, will move down. If they can't afford the A class, they might step down to a B or C class. Sometimes that happens. And let's talk a little bit about the Class D. Class D properties are older, often run down and in need of repair. They may be located in areas of high crime, in neighborhoods that are declining. And always keep in mind here when we talk about A, B, and C and D class apartments and A, B, C, and D class neighborhoods, they're not always identical. Some may have some of one thing and not of some of another, right? So a building that was built with very little amenities might fall into a B class sooner than one that was built with lots of amenities, really nice clubhouse, right? The like the exercise rooms, the more amenities, right? So Class D properties are older, often run down in need of repair. We talked about that a little bit. High crime in neighborhoods that are declining. They have a risk of high vacancy and frequent evictions. On paper, Class D properties appear to cash flow well, but when you take into account vacancy, it's often not the case because people typically don't want to live there. Maybe they don't have a good job. Maybe they're, I don't know what all the reason might be. Someone would be living in a D class property where they're, it's a poor neighborhood, like high crime. And so maybe there's drug traffic, maybe there's illegal things going on. And so I try to stay away from those. I do stay away from those properties. And we feel like it's not as good of an investment opportunity as well for our own money and for our investors. And so let's look a little bit about the classification by property age. Some investors define the class of property purely by age. For example, an A-type property might be built in the last 10 years, a B class in the last 20 years, a C class the last 30 years, and a D class as anything over 40 years of age. This is a pretty narrow definition that doesn't take into account the unique characteristics of the property. For example, you can imagine a beautifully finished brick 1910 multifamily property might sell at a higher multiple than a 2010 rental grade property. Therefore, I find a time-based property grading system to be too narrow. I think if you use it in isolation, you're likely to run into confusion when communicating with your team. And so let's talk about the risk and the return by class. The Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D. One of the most important reasons to understand a building class difference is understanding the inherent risk of each class. Most investors see type A properties as low risk due to the tenant base. There's a low risk of evictions, for example. Also, there's a possibility for market appreciation, which attracts a lot of investors. In comparison, type D properties are seen as higher risk and more effort. This is due to the amount of vacancies and evictions. There's also very little possibility for market appreciation unless you buy in a neighborhood that becomes gentrified down the road. And I actually see that class B and C properties are the lower risk. This is the key to why we prefer B and C multifamily class over other classes. And why we prefer B and C class properties? I like to see properties that cash flow every month or every quarter when we do our distributions. We don't invest in type A properties for this reason. The owner is hoping for market appreciation. Type A properties are higher risk in the event of a downturn in the economy. If people who live in type A properties lose income for any reason, they downsize their lifestyle and move into type B and C properties. We also force these properties to appreciate by improving them and increasing their financial performance from when we purchased the deal, right? And so now it's worth more because there's more income and more people want to buy the property, and the banks will finance more in the event of like a refinance. We can pull some of our capital out and distribute to our investors. Sometimes that's a great plan. Sometimes it's better to sell the property at a higher rate, depending on, a lot of things like interest rates and other factors, where it's located, where the properties are located, and things like that. Our portfolio is made up of B and C class properties, renting from 700 to almost 2,000 a month. That's from the 1 bed, 1 bath all the way up to 3 bed, 2 bath. And we believe this lowers our risk and maximizes our returns over the long term. And so to summarize this, A, B, and C class, A, B, C, and D class property classification systems, you can Google it. You can learn more about it. If there's anything that I went over you don't understand, or you have other questions, right, later as you're listening to this and you want to become more familiar with different classifications, you can look at the property classification, and you can also look at the surrounding area classification, because the areas are classified by in the ABC and ABC and D class rating as well. And those are fairly general terms, as we mentioned. As I covered, it's not all across the board. It's not totally by age, because you can have 100-year-old building and it might still be an A or B class building, right? Because maybe it's in an A class neighborhood, and maybe it's very well maintained and it's gorgeous, right? We've seen some of those in maybe some downtown areas or some residential areas where it looks better, like the amenities and the interior, like the countertops, the appliances are all like top of the line, with better amenities than, you know, most other apartments. And so it could be a class A and it could be 100 years old. So it's not, but typically that's not the case. Typically, age is a good determining factor, as well as a lot of other factors. So do your research. You can Google it. You can search like YouTube and all these their social channels where other professionals talk about classes and why they invest in what they do, because there's a lot of other reasons out there than you know, my reasons I've given you today. So please take the time to reach out. Be happy to do a one-on-one call with anyone want to know more about what we do here at Eagle City Multifamily. My phone number is 903-951-7552. You can call and text on this number. Again, that's 903-951-7552. And you can also book a Zoom call time on my calendar at chatwithherb.com. And that's simply Google search chatwithherb.com and book some time on my calendar. Would love to talk more about what we do and how you can you know, get involved or answer any questions about apartments, especially here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas. And I will see you the next time.